What's up, guys? Out to here with another quick video, and I want to talk about this one particular video clip that I saw yesterday, and it was Kirk Franklin. You guys know the gospel singer. Um, he's been making uh, gospel songs, I think, for probably the past 30 years, and very, very popular in the gospel music industry. Well, anyway, I know I was on, I don't know if it was Facebook or Instagram, and I saw where I guess one of his sons, I think this guy's about 33. The post said he was 33 years old. And apparently, him and Kirk Franklin was having a back and forth dispute where at one point in the video, I guess um, the son had said some disrespectful things. Now, you know, just to be clear, at this point that I'm making this video, I don't know what the argument was about or how it started. All I know is that it's the clip that I seen was Kirk Franklin just basically just going off, and then the son was the one. The son was the one who was recording it because I guess he had one phone in one hand, and he had the phone that was in his hand was recording what Kirk Franklin was saying by another phone that was being placed on his lap. Um, and that's the one that Kirk Franklin was talking through. So anyway, I came in on a part where, or the part that I seen was, like a little 30-second, 1 minute video or something, and Kirk Franklin was just going off, using some pretty bad language. I'm talking about language that I don't even think that I used when I was unsaved, and I'm just being completely honest with you. Um, Dropping f bombs and the N word and threatening his son that he was going to do this and do that, and and you guys know if you've seen any of my videos in the past, uh, I've been critical of Kirk Franklin. Not as much, but I have made a couple of videos mentioning him. But uh, the reason why I wanted to make this video is not to touch too much on that situation. I'm not here. You guys know my channel isn't about gossip and ooh, somebody said this and somebody did that. But whenever I do see things like this, it does bring up kind of stirs something up in me to want to address these topics because these are things that we may see happening in our own circles. Not something as extreme as what happened with Kirk Franklin, but we may be witnessing certain things that could lead up to this, right? Um, and we all know that Kirk Franklin has been one of those people who's been straddling the gospel music industry and the secular music industry, right? Um, and I think in my video, Dressing the Foolishness in the Black Church, I did mention Kirk Franklin, how he was doing songs with secular artists and things like that. So this kind of behavior from him, it doesn't surprise me. I'm not like, oh, Kirk Franklin used some bad language. I was just like, man, dude, anybody can act a certain way on camera, but off camera, you know, I just it just doesn't surprise me basically with how Kirk Franklin was reacting. But one of the things that I do notice, and actually, my wife and I was having this conversation, and we've had this conversation a couple of times because, well, number one, I'm going to start out and say that my wife, she was raised in the church in her younger years. And I'm talking about in the church, holiness, Pentecostal, Mom had them in church every Sunday. Tuesday, Wednesday night revivals, Friday youth night. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they were into the church. I wasn't brought up in the church. Um, I mean, we went sometime, and then there were certain periods in my young adulthood when I started driving. I started, you know, visiting and attending churches, trying to be a part of a fellowship, and it just, I just never gravitated towards the church um, until after I got saved. But we have these conversations periodically because we do see those who are brothers and sisters in the faith that they may be very involved in the church, whether they're pastors or missionaries or evangelists, or even elders at a church. And whenever we see the relationship between them and their children as they get older, they either fall away from the faith or um, they just end up having, bad relationships or separate relationships with their parents. And we talk about these things, and instead of just brushing it off as, oh, them kids just must be filled with the devil, sometimes you have to analyze the parents, and I know that some of y'all are probably gonna turn this video off at this point. Some of y'all probably don't want to hear this part, but anyway, um, sometimes us as parents, we have to be mindful of how much time we're dedicating to the ministry versus time with our family. And I know that some people are going to say, well, this is what God called me to do, and this is what I need to do. But let's be honest. Is God really calling you to spend so much time away from your family? Are you telling me that God blessed you with a wife and children for you to just turn around and just be gone majority of the time? Every time you look around, you're not home. You don't have the kids with you. You don't have the family with you. And for some of you guys who are familiar with John Piper, I mean, John Piper's son is, you know, he doesn't even like his father. John Piper is a very prominent, um, I would say, apologist or teacher. Um, I mean, he has some very, very great messages, but his son is a full blown atheist, mocks the faith like you wouldn't believe. And then even when we talk about Rabbi Zacharias, right? Rabbi Zacharias, the reason why he was able to be caught up in the sins that he was because he spent so much time away from his family, so much time away from his wife. You know what I'm saying? So there's nobody who can convince me that the Lord is telling them that they need to have a family, but then they need to be gone all the time. And I know people will bring up the disciples and the apostles, and they'll say, "Well, some of these guys had families and stuff too, but Jesus called them, and they were gone, and it was with Jesus, the whole time." But Jesus was the Messiah on the earth at the time. I mean, well, he is the Messiah of the earth, but he was living on the earth, walking around as flesh and blood at that time, and he also called them. Jesus said in the scriptures that he called them. They didn't call him. They didn't just follow him. If you think about it, Jesus called those 12 men. Jesus had over 5,000 people following him at one time, but in the end, who was left following him? It was the 12. Because he chose them, they didn't choose him. So there's nobody nowadays walking around on the planet that's being called by Christ to just abandon their families and spread the gospel. I mean, it seems noble on the surface, but at the end of the day, as as men of the household, we're called to disciple our families first. Point point blank. You know, you want to be a minister, minister to your family first. That's what we're called to do as men of God, as men of faith. And yes, even if you are an evangelist or even if you are a pastor or an elder at a church, your family, you're supposed to minister to your family first. That's why I think it's in First Timothy when Paul is writing to Timothy and he's talking about the qualifications of an overseer, and he says that this man must be able to manage his household, because how can he manage God's church if he can't even manage his own household? You see what I'm saying? So this comes back full circle to the scripture, points you right back to the scripture. And I mean, there's so many examples that we can look at where some of these prominent pastors, them and their children have gotten into it. They're just diametrically opposed to each other. I mean, like Creflo Dollar, I think it was a few years back, him and his 15-year-old daughter got into a fist fight or something. You know what I'm saying? And the first thing we think about is how can somebody who has been or who is a prominent pastor, how their children have no regard for them. And it's because a lot of these pastors, they dedicate so much time, or people just, who have a position in these churches, gospel singers, not just pastors, but, people who are traveling evangelists and missionaries, sometimes they spend so much time away from the family, doing the work of God, to where they neglect their own families. And then by the time these children get old enough, they don't respect them, because they don't see the gospel. They don't see the power of God moving, because you're always gone. You're in other countries, and you're in other cities and in other states and stuff, and everybody is being edified by your presence and by your teaching or by your music, but your family's not getting that at the house. You know what I'm saying? I've heard stories of where uh, people who were children of people like this, who were just really heavy into the church, and they're just like, my dad was one of the meanest people ever. I mean, he would come off, I mean, we ain't seen him in a couple of weeks, and I mean, the first thing he does when he get home, he's yelling and he's barking orders, and it's like, sometimes we wonder, how do some of these children end up like this? How do they end up dishonoring their mother and father? And sometimes we're so quick to be like, oh, that's just a problem child. No, sometimes it's you, pastor. Sometimes it's you, evangelist. Sometimes it's you, choir director, worship leader. Sometimes it's actually you who make your kids the way that they are, who provoke your kids to anger. The Bible is very, very clear on that. Do not provoke your children to anger. You know, and this is another thing, and I know that people are going, boy, they gonna get me for this one. um, the fourth commandment, right? When we say, remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. Now, I'm gonna stop right here, because I don't want nobody saying that. He's starting to slip over into the dark side. He either trying to be a 7-day Adventist, or he trying to be a Hebrew Israelite. No, that's just listen to what I'm about to say. But remember what the Sabbath day was for, right? And Jesus cleared this up. I think it was in John, where I think it was probably in all four Gospels, but I know at least two of the Gospels, where Jesus said that Sabbath was made for man, man not made for the Sabbath, right? God had given man a day of rest, right? And I believe that God gave man a day of rest, so therefore work will not be his idol. That will not become his God. And I think that a lot of times, we can have conversations with people who really hold to the Sabbath day, or who's really trying to promote the Sabbath day as something that we should be keeping. Now, when it comes to keeping the Sabbath day, and I'm trying not to go down a rabbit hole here, but when it comes to keeping the Sabbath day as a form of being right with God, then that's when you're in error. You're in error when you're trying to keep that law or that commandment to say, look, I'm being righteous. That's totally false. But when you understand what the Sabbath day was for, because you got to remember, all of the commandments and all of the laws that God gave man, it doesn't benefit him. They were all beneficial to us as humans. You know what I'm saying? Not saying that we just keep the ones that we can and we throw out the rest. That's not how that works. But anyway, when we look deep into the Sabbath day, there was a reason why God gave us a day of rest, to not just be work, 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 trying to get it. I gotta go out and get it. Gotta be here. Gotta be there. You know, there has to be a day of rest. There has to be a day and a time for family where you just drop everything and you let your family know that, hey, you guys are more important than what's going on out here, because I got to make sure that my household is in order. I can't go out here trying to make sure everyone else's household is in order. I got to make sure my household is straight, you know, before I can just be out here and just preaching and evangelizing to everybody else. And we can look at Kirk Franklin. We can tell by him being this popular music guy, he probably wasn't really around, with his kids. And I mean, he got a 33-year-old son, and probably back in the 90s, um, when he was starting to come up, I'm pretty sure that Kirk Franklin was out on the road all the time. And this is before the internet and iTunes and streaming services and YouTube and all of that stuff, where you actually had to be at churches. You know what I'm saying? You had to be there. You had to show up. You had to be at concerts in different cities. So I'm pretty sure he wasn't there. Now, if we can criticize secular folk for working all the time and not being around their children, then we definitely have to criticize the church, pastors and preachers. You're basically doing the same thing. You ain't there with the family. You gone all the time. And then sometimes when you get back, you don't feel like doing anything. So the children who want your attention the most because they haven't seen you, you're not really giving it to them. And then they grow up and they end up with this complex like, hey, you know what I'm saying? This is what dad do. He ain't never around. He's not here. And they get used to that. And then that is, you're basically opening the door and letting the devil into your home. You're basically giving them the keys to your house. Because as you're there and you're not there protecting your children, the devil can slip right in and just start picking them off one by one. You know, so these are the things that we have to address. These are the things that we have to be mindful of. Even those who have YouTube ministries. If you have a YouTube ministry and the only thing that you can the only thing that's on your agenda is making videos, trying to make as many videos as you can, and putting out content, and just trying to make sure that you're cranking out these videos left and right, and you're not spending time with your family. I mean, that can be detrimental. You may not see it now, but it will come back. Yeah, that's why even me sometimes, um, I can't do live streams every Saturday, every Friday, on the weekend. That's why sometimes you guys don't see me doing as many videos, to where I got all of the effects and stuff in the background, because that stuff takes time. And like right now, I'm doing this video and it's about 18 minutes long. If I was to try to turn around and edit this and add in graphics and all of that stuff, man, it could probably take me a couple of days to edit this. I mean, hours at a time, to make sure I'm getting the right pictures and the right background and the right music and all of that. It takes time, man. And that's time that's spent away from my family. With all that I got going on, with my work, plus trying to do this on the side, it can be a lot. It can be a lot. So we have to be mindful of that, man. And if you're one of these people and you're out and you're doing evangelism and you're traveling a lot, or if you're a missionary and you're just, and you're traveling from city to city, state to state, country to country sometime, or you're a pastor and you're shepherding a pretty well-sized congregation, just be mindful of the time that you spend with your family. Just be mindful of that, you know. But anyway, guys, I really didn't intend for this video to be this long, because I know a lot of y'all stop around like the 4 or 5 minute mark. can't listen to no more. But anyway, sorry for the long video. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think that we have to put everything on the line, including our families, to go out and save souls? To be evangelists and to be teachers of the faith and traveling missionaries? Or do you happen to believe that, hey, listen, we got to make sure our households are in order first before we can go out and do anything? There has to be a balance. And even evangelizing and being missionaries, that is considered work. Even though it is work for the Lord, but we still got to make sure that we're dedicating some of that time to our families. But whatever you guys think, leave it in the comment section below. And as always, like this video, rate it, share it, subscribe, and you guys have a blessed day.